Today we have Marisa Thompson, our executive marketing consultant at Dragonfly Strategists. Marisa has a very large depth of knowledge inside of marketing and the hospitality industry. She also has a very, very creative spirit and inspiring energy that has named her Dragonfly's creative cowgirl. We're really thrilled to have Marisa on today, and I will also remind everyone to please post any questions or comments they have in the chat so we can answer those during the interview. And now I'll kick it over to Marisa and to Carol. Thank you.
Thanks, Nicole. Hello, Marisa. How are you?
Hi, Carol. I'm good. How are you?
Very good, thanks. It's so good to see you.
You too. I'm glad you're in. Oh, I'm glad you're in my time zone now.
I know, right? I hope to get to see you actually in the flesh before too long, huh?
Yeah.
So tell me, our first question always is, how are you? How's your family? How are things going? I know you've got remote schooling going on and all kinds of things in your household. So how are things in New Mexico?
Well, I'm really glad because our state's actually doing really well in terms of COVID numbers. So that's a relief. And we're hoping to get kids back in school and everything soon. And I'm doing good. I'm glad I live in a place with a lot of natural beauty. So I try to get out and get hiking as much as possible.
Yeah, I know. I'm glad to be here in Colorado as well. And we're doing well with our COVID numbers, at least. New Mexico and Colorado aren't on Andrew Cuomo's naughty list right now to come to New York, so that's a good thing. So, hey, I know you and I have been chatting about this time and marketing and, how can we help hotels recover and how can we position what's happening. And today we're going to do a little different style. We're going to walk through sort of a checklist that you've created for hotels to use to drive recovery. But, what are your thoughts on marketing right now? And what are your thoughts on, the message that we have to have as an industry to our guests and just kind of where things sit at this moment in time?
Well, for all marketers right now, especially hospitality and hotel marketers, I think we oscillate between performance anxiety. Will what we do work? Well, we're searching for revenue in just about any corner. And we're also, a little bit gun shy about, shrinking budgets, shrinking market decline. What do we do? Where can we find this? The challenges, and we know this more in the hospitality industry, I think, and live events industry than anyone else, is to be really sensitive with your communications, because you have guests in your email lists, on your social media, who've lost their jobs, who cannot, who would love to travel, but can't right now. So I think there's some sensitivity that needs to be in the marketing messages to realize, people have lost their livelihoods, and travel, paying their rent is a challenge for some people, let alone, being able to travel if you're healthy enough to.
Right. So, from a basic standpoint, what do you think are some of the essentials that people need to do? And we've touched on some of these in past sessions, but I think it needs to be reiterated because I still see some hotels that aren't employing these tactics.
Yeah, that's why I thought today, we should really cover the basics, because you think a lot of this stuff is second nature. It's I Googled hotel marketing in COVID recovery, and there were 423 million results. I feel like we're on, there's a zillion webinars, but I'm still shocked to find hotels that aren't doing basic things. So, very basic thing is really about getting information out. You need to have a COVID-19 frequently asked questions page on your website. You've talked a lot about how, 6 months ago, 8 months ago, we'd never talk about putting detailed housekeeping procedures on our website. And now we have hotels doing what's called sanitation theater, where you see very sexy shots of people spraying down rooms with industrial, chemicals and, wiping down every single surface. And it's crazy, but these basic things are really important. Cancellation policies. I mean, if you have like, I can't, cancel anything, that's going to be really, that's just not going to set you apart from your competition. Nobody is going to travel right now where they say, oh, I have to book up front, pay, I get a lower rate, and then can't cancel. And part of that is, I think it's important for hotels to keep updated with your state and local policies and ordinances. I'm in New Mexico, and right now, I think it's still in place, but our governor put a 14-day quarantine on any out-of-state visitors. I don't know how that's being enforced. If you're a hotel front desk, you say, oh, I'm sorry, I see you're only here for 2 nights. You have to stay for 14 and you can't leave your room. Right. I don't know how that's being enforced, but because of that, we know it would be almost irresponsible to advertise weekend getaways to out-of-state guests, because then we're actually putting out in the world something that goes against our local orders. And that's not, that's not going to fly real well.
Yeah, for sure. So, where do you think, so you mentioned cancellation policies, you mentioned the FAQs, what are some of the other basics, some of the other content that needs to be adjusted?
When you're updating your cancellation policy, that thing is in a lot of places. It's on the OTAs, it's on different distribution partners. It's also in your email confirmation. So you really need to have a place to kind of know where you need to put all that information. So don't just update cancellation policy on your website and ignore your confirmation emails. And I know marketing departments in hotels and hospitality have almost been decimated across the board. So there's other people, there's revenue managers doing this, there's salespeople, it can be really challenging because the people who did this might not be at your property right now. So that's why when we're done with this, we'll publish a list of kind of basics to help people who might not have this knowledge, up front. But there's also something interesting. And again, I'm in New Mexico, and they've done this New Mexico True Safe Promise. And this is some sort of tourism initiative. You can go online, you can get your property certified, your staff certified in the sanitation, and then you get on their special website and they say, we're all part of it. So I think keeping those partnerships with your local tourism entities is going to be really critical right now for the recovery.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. I've seen just so many of the tourism groups around the states really trying to focus in on how can we help, like how can we keep communication relevant out to our members, how can we help them understand what the existing guidelines are, what are the resources that you can use, where are the opportunities for demand that perhaps weren't even in the picture 6 months ago. And I've seen some localities just really do a great job. I think that New Mexico initiative is really a good one. We are highlighting a couple of the hotels in New Mexico on an article we have coming out here shortly, just about boutique and independent hotels and how can they be seen as just as good or better than brands on being sure that the cleanliness aspect is truly taken care of and truly taken seriously. And I think New Mexico has actually done a really good job with that initiative. And, we've seen some great things out of New York State as well, just with, again, the guidance that they're giving around reopening and around how to manage it. And, whether that be local chapters of HSMAI or the CVB, it's definitely important to stay in touch and also to collaborate with other people in the industry in your market who are still working, and being able to share information about what you're seeing and what the opportunities are, what the regulations are, how you're handling it internally. So I think that networking aspect of being able to stay in touch with colleagues is super important as well. from an organized, I know one of the things, major categories on the list is organize and clean up marketing content. So what are the different areas that need to be touched on with this? Do we really need to go in and clean our email databases up?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is annoying. Yes. Yes. This is annoying, tedious work that always has to be done. It always has, you always have old, outdated photos on there. You're always going to have some content that needs cleanup. And now when demand is, almost non-existent in some places to extremely, record low pretty much everywhere, well, you got the time, because you're not trying to, if you're managing multiple properties, you might be pushing out your outlet promotions. You might be really engaged in your bar, your spa, your restaurant promotions. Well, those might not be existing right now. So that's really important. So you said email list segmentation, and that goes back to, like, if your state ordinance says all outside visitors have to quarantine for 14 days, and you don't have your email list segmented by geography, well, then you can't market, because if you can just market to people within your state, that's great. These staycations, and knowing that is going to be really important to be on topic with your message. So if your email list has never been more important. We've always stressed this. Please get those OTA emails. I mean, we've run initiatives for front desks of how, even contests, how can we get these emails? And now, if you had those initiatives in the past and you were collecting those OTA guest emails, you're better positioned than if you weren't. And if you weren't, now is the time to start this and really look at your email, because digital marketing has always been, or has been, rising for so many years, and now it's like the only thing we have. So, it's one of the only tools. You don't have people coming to your property and taking those great photos and sharing those photos. I'm at this resort on the beach and it's great. You don't have that because people aren't traveling. So you need to really focus on your email list.
Yeah, and another thing that I know the OTAs are doing is really encouraging hotels to facilitate that communication directly with guests on their sites as well, because they do assign emails. It may not be the guest email, but they do assign emails to each reservation. And so, there is a way to communicate out. And I know when we had Jenna on from Outrigger Hotels and Resorts, they've been able to, because they've had to communicate the total quarantine of Hawaii over and over and over again, unfortunately, because it still hasn't opened. But they've been able to go out that 30 days and communicate to even those OTA customers. So, there is some value in communicating some of the local policies and rules and requirements, even to those guests as well. What about photos? I mean, what would you do with imagery right now? Do you think there are any changes that need to be made with regard to what you're showing on your website? And let's talk first about kind of generic photos and more leisure, transient driven, and then let's talk a little bit about groups and meetings after that. But, what do you think people need to do with imagery?
So imagery has always been extremely important, probably the most important thing for a property, to show your spaces. And those of you in marketing know, yes, you have to shoot the bathrooms. For the OTAs, they want to see bathroom. I remember getting in crazy angles with photographer, like, don't show the toilet, so tacky. But like photography now, it's all you have. And last week we heard from Booking.com in a previous Insights interview, and they said people are gravitating towards their outdoor spaces. So do you have great photos of your outdoor spaces? Have you repositioned your outdoor spaces for more outdoor dining? Have you transformed your parking lot into a movie drive-in theater? What do you have photos of what you're offering right now? And also those photos of sanitation. I've seen some of the big brands have put out, like, really, I know these are expensive video shoots of people cleaning and smiling and having masks and, and there's been a lot of effort towards this. So I really think looking at that photo library, and also if you do have photos of your outlet spaces, you know, you might not want to feature those right now. If you have a very crowded restaurant or nightclub, well, that's not probably happening in your world right now, I'm guessing. So again, those photos you might want to save for when full recovery comes back. And instead, I'm like, well, I did good when I did some empty restaurant photos because we couldn't have people at one point. And I'm like, well, now those are coming in real good use because an empty restaurant looks appealing right now.
I want to kind of go on an aside here that we didn't necessarily talk about, but it just reminded me of something that you and I did together when we worked together in New Mexico. And I've used this example of you doing this with our website many times over as a great example of content. So when we were introducing a new website for the hotel company we worked for, you determined that you didn't want to compete with the hotel down the street, but you wanted to compete with the state of New Mexico for eyes on the website. And so you built out amazing content that was about the state and not just, and what the opportunities were in the state, and not just about the hotel individually. And especially on the corporate site, you did this. So what do you think about a hotel, you know, if they don't have a ton of outdoor type space in their hotel, but there are things in the city or the region or the town or the area that they are located that are outdoor activities, since people are seeking that out right now so much. You know, Colorado was 78% occupied last weekend, right? So, I mean, we're getting a lot of people coming here, I know, because we still allow people to come that want to be outdoors. So what do you think about kind of positioning your hotel a bit to compete with your destination and to have some destination information and opportunities for things for guests to do outside of the hotel?
I think that's always been really critical and is a really critical piece, because we've always known that guests don't choose to go stay at a hotel unless it's an all-inclusive resort, you know, somewhere remote, you know, where that they choose the destination. You know, you don't, you know, it's, you know, I would be going to New York City and staying in a great hotel, but I'm not going to, you know, New York City just for this hotel. It's because of everything New York has to offer. So I think that goes back to the partnerships with your tourism bureau. What are they promoting? You know, do you have a lot of outdoor outfitters in your area? Can you partner with them? Can you build outdoor packages with them? I'm a firm believer in these partnerships that benefit everybody and raise up the whole industry. So if you have some outfitters in your area, see what they're doing. Are they doing safe bike rides, or hiking, kayaking, whatever outdoor things, and see if you can partner and get their photos to use on your promotions.
Yeah.
Through that partnership. Then you don't have to take your own photos. You get them from the tourism bureau. And that's a thing that a lot of hotels haven't done, is a lot of the tourism, state and local CVB tourism bureaus, DMOs, have a photo library that's available for you to use in your promotions for free. And they're usually very good photos, professionally done. And so now would be the time to reach out to them and try and get some of those photos for your promotions.
Yeah, definitely. And then I think too, just in going forward on that partnership aspect, I think that we can be, you know, part of being a good citizen to our locally owned businesses as well, and trying to encourage our guests to support them. And I know we had a lot of initiatives in the past that we launched regarding that. So do you think that would lend some goodwill to the community if we did that at hotels more?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think these kind of strategic partnerships where maybe you're partnering with a local winery, you know, and a local outdoor outfitter, and you're developing these really kind of more immersive packages. I think the industry, especially in boutique, has been moving there for a long time, because it's more about the holistic experience of travel, where yes, you have a hotel, and yes, the hotel has all these amenities, but what's your entire experience in that community that you're visiting? And what experiences can the hotel kind of facilitate, so you don't have to go research your own and find that, you know, bicycle tour company or things like that. So I think that goes back to the partnerships in your area and being hyper local, because we know what we're seeing is the drive market, and it's going to be that way for a while. It's I don't think it's going to change.
Yeah. So that kind of segues into getting creative. You know, of course, as marketers, we want to be creative, right? And we should be creative as marketers. But how can we get, you know, what types of things might work right now in that creative space to kind of think outside of the hotel with some of our outdoor spaces, with some promotions, that type of thing? What advice do you have in that area?
Well, this is what I love watching right now. You are seeing creativity on a level never before, because you're forced to be creative right now. And if you're not, you know, you're not having any revenue anywhere else. So I have seen promotions with hotels renting out as office space. People are working from home. They are really getting sick of their houses. Some properties are doing really well with, like, look, it's away from your family. We have high-speed internet that will actually not crash on you. You know, those things are happening. And then, you know, school classroom place, you know, everybody who's homeschooling now, which you've always done, but a lot of us, you know, are new to this and did not choose this. And so, you know, what is there? I've seen hotels hosting drive-in movies in their parking lot. You know, they're repositioning their rooftop spaces. They're taking over sidewalks and streets. And some of the cities are complying with that, so you can have outdoor restaurants where maybe you never had a patio for your restaurant. Well, now you get to make one. And some communities are even helping with grants to convert some spaces like that. So I really think right now it's kind of the spaghetti method. Everybody in hospitality tourism is throwing something at the wall and seeing what sticks. And if it doesn't stick, you got to quickly move on, transition, and try something new, because, you know, we've got to find some revenue somewhere to keep us afloat in this transition time. Yeah,
I saw in doing some research around some of the creative things hotels were doing, one of the Viceroy hotels in San Francisco actually had a work package with a workout package. So, you know, since gyms were closed, they had the package of, you know, come and work, and then either at the beginning of your day or at the end of your day, you know, we'll have some type of equipment, either, you know, yoga that you can do on screen or Peloton or whatever. Like, you can actually get your work done, your workout done, and then go home. And, you know, it wasn't horribly expensive to do that. And I thought, you know, that's a great idea, because, you know, so some hotel rooms have turned into private gyms for people, right? So, you know, we've got to get creative about, you know, what is needed, where's their demand, and how can we craft something to respond to where there is demand. You know, one of the things you have on the checklist that I really like is walk your entire space and reimagine what it could be used for today and what needs there are in your community. And you put, you know, pool passes, gym passes, private romantic dinners, etc. And I saw one hotel that has some villas who, you know, they did this whole package around, you come here and you stay here, like with your bubble, whoever your bubble is, and they send a private chef in to cook for you, and you never have to leave. Like, you can stay there, you're quarantined together with your bubble, but you don't even have to go out to get food, you know. And they talked about how their chefs have COVID tests and all this kind of stuff, you know. So again, getting creative. So what are some of the things people could do with their space, even with their public space, that might look different outside of kind of that food and beverage thing?
Well, I think that's where, you know, you get creative. If you can take, you know, whoever's at your team on your property and walk everywhere and think about, what can we do with all of these spaces? You know, we have, you know, a lot of big box spaces, we have lobby spaces, you know, indoor, outdoor, and really just start to reimagine what needs are there in the community. You know, what needs, people are craving connection right now. They do miss, you know, those occasion dinners, you know, like a romantic anniversary dinner. Well, how can you cater to that? Here's a hotel suite. You know, we will set up the most romantic dinner for you. It includes wine, private chef, meal, things like that. And then you got to go in our pool. You know, again, if you can open your pool or hot tub, what does that look like? So I think it's different again in every community and every property, but we have to look at those spaces. Don't look at a meeting room as a meeting room anymore. Just look at the space and try to go wild and think, what could it be used for? And let yourself go crazy. An exercise I used to do with a lot of marketing teams was from Tom Monahan's book, Do It Yourself Lobotomy. And one of my favorite exercises is 100-mile-per-hour thinking. And with that, you get everyone in a room and you give them sticky notes, and they have to, so if we took, like, say, a big conference room, everybody in that room has to brainstorm, you know, as many ideas as they can in 10 minutes, even if they're crazy, to get to a good idea to start to really think outside of the box. Because everyone always says that, but actually pulling your mind there really takes some, you know, creativity in order to get not in our, it's a meeting space, we could do a banquet, we could do a wedding, you know, what, well, no, you can't do all those right now. So what can you do with that? You know, is there some sort of daycare option you could offer? Because I bet you parents would be willing to pay for that, especially after homeschooling all day.
Yeah, for sure. I remember, you know, when I worked for Kenton Hotels, I worked for Steve Panetti, who is a master marketer, right? And his thing to his entire team, what he would say to us was, I have 200 ideas a day. It's your job to figure out which 2 are good. And so, you know, but the only way you can get to those 2 good ideas is if you have ideas, right? So, you know, you've got to have ideation and creation and not be afraid to throw out something that sounds crazy, because it might just be the solution. You know, I've seen some good examples. Some of our clients, Arlo Hotels, has done a brilliant job of repurposing some of their public spaces. When I worked with Journal Hotels, we had a couple of really brilliant creative ideation people on the team, and they would just walk around the hotel, and see like this empty space outside and be like, can't we turn that into a beer garden? And then 2 weeks later, it was all of a sudden a beer garden, you know. And you got to have those inspirations and those thoughts and those opportunities to be creative and to think outside of what is normal, because we're simply not living in any normal circumstances. I mean, we should do that anyhow as marketers, but now even more so, we have to walk down that path. What about, let's talk about meetings and meeting spaces a little bit. I know I'm just really surprised. I know photography is expensive and no one is wanting to invest a lot of money in this right now, but I'm really surprised at how many things that I've seen where hotels still have packed meeting rooms pictures on their sites and big cocktail receptions with everyone standing close together and all of this. And that guy, I look at that and I go, COVID, I think, we were at the last conference that we went to this year, the last time you and I traveled together in San Antonio. And when I think to hugging all those people and all the things we hoteliers do, I'm like, yeah, not so much right now, right? So how can we both show the world that we're taking this seriously as a meetings and events industry, and how can we reimagine those spaces? And are there any things that you've seen that are particularly safe around how we can start marketing this? And I know it's going to be a bit for meetings to return, but I think we need to start thinking about it now.
Yes, you do need to start thinking about it now. In some hotels, I've seen innovative things where they have like wristbands at a meeting where people can wear a different color based on don't shake hands with me to give me a hug or something. People in those packed conferences and packed, which is like, yes, we have a big convention, let's get a big photo shoot of it. It looks great. They're bringing a helicopter in or something like that. well, we know that's not going to be a reality. I think the live events, meetings and conventions, we know is going to be last. It's the first to go, the last to return based on safety. But I think that's where hotels are getting really innovative with their AV services, because do you have the capability to host, you know, a couple groups and do a great, you know, virtual meeting with people? What can those spaces be used for now? What's different? And I think that's where looking at both in your market, what's innovative, you know, going on with your peers, your comp set, and then also looking nationally to, you know, other destinations. You know, maybe you are a major U.S. city. What are other big box properties in U.S. cities doing? Because, you know, they're so meeting intensive. And what are they doing?
Yeah.
I still think that the jury's out on meetings. And since HDC just went all virtual at your last convention last week, I think there's, you know, I don't think there's a silver bullet. And I think that's, as marketers, we're like watching webinars and reading articles and thinking, oh my gosh, there's got to be something, please help me. But there isn't the answer. The answer doesn't exist. There might be a series of a bunch of answers, and that's where you go back to try. I mean, you have no revenue coming in. If you try pushing out a promotion and it doesn't work, you're back at the same place. So try something new. I mean, that's,
Yeah.
You don't have a choice now.
Yeah, for sure. You know, it's something that we heard on the HDC conference last week that I thought was rather interesting. One of the things they were trying to do, because the Nashville CVB was trying to partner with the state health department and the governor, and HDC was actually going to be one of the pilot tests for having a mix of an on-site and virtual group safely. But there were just a few things that didn't get approved in time, and so they ended up having to go all virtual, which I think it got approved, like you said, like 3 days before the conference, but at that point you couldn't tell everyone to rebook their flights and come back in, right? So I think it'll be interesting for hotel teams to figure out, how can we partner with the CVB to do this safely? Like, what are the guidelines? Can we work with our health department to encourage some meetings and events in kind of a hybrid model? Like, what does it look like to have something that is considered health and safety approved, for lack of a better word, right? So I think that Nashville, to me, they seem like they're very, very forward thinking, and you know, because they were built on being a meeting destination over the last 10 years, right? So you know, they've got to get this business back. And so I think so much of what we've got to do now is we've got to partner with people we've never thought about partnering with before, including potentially our governor's office and health and safety departments and that type of thing, to figure out, you know, because someone has to feel safe to get on a plane and come and stay in your hotel and go to a meeting. And then you've got to offer, you know, companies are going to need to offer that virtual counterpart to that for people who just don't. You know, they may have a compromised immune system themselves, or take care of an older parent or a child with asthma. So, you know, we have to be thinking about all of those things. And, you know, I think for hotels, you know, one of the ways that event spaces could be used in the future is for, you know, executive teams of companies to broadcast from there. Because, you know, maybe they can't get to their studio that they had in New York City to do these things, but maybe they can have 10 hotels and where these people live, so that they can do like a professional broadcast of something instead of from their home. And maybe companies will be willing to invest in that. So, you know, there's a lot happening with that virtual and on-site hybrid model that, you know, we've got to be thinking about, and how can we effectively communicate what we can offer.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I've even seen some hotels going out and selling like group room blocks at a discount. Like, if you buy 100 rooms for us right now, we'll charge you, and they can be used anytime in the next, you know, 2 years with blackout dates, blah, 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 blah. But just trying to generate any revenue, you know, selling gift certificates for future stays with very generous, you know, expiration policies, and staycation, you know, drive market activities. I think all of that plays into meetings, and we know that the leisure traveler also would do what I would always do. Oh, I'm going here. Okay, I'm going to tack on a couple extra days, especially when you have a conference in Hawaii. We know,
Right.
there's certain destinations that like you would be crazy not to tack on extra days.
Right.
And we know the leisure is being impacted by that kind of, the bleisure, meeting kind of hybrid thing too. So how can we make that happen? I don't have the answer, and I don't think anyone does right now. And that's why it's, what does this look like? What does it look like in your community? And how can you, but you mentioned this, and you've done this on several of the insights, is it is important to keep those relationships with your groups. If you got rid of your entire sales department, or, everybody's furloughed and nobody's keeping those relationships, and your competitor is, then when it does come back, they might go to your competitor. So you have to think about that right now too, in these, especially, really great salespeople have these wonderful long-term relationships with their clients, and you want to preserve that, because that's an asset for you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I know the last point we want to make is about advanced marketing and strong positioning, right? Advanced marketing equals strong positioning. And one of the things that we've seen, and G-commerce has actually produced a case study from one of their hotels, Surf and Sand, I believe, out in California, about this hyper local campaign that they did that succeeded extremely well. And we can actually send out this case study when we send out the email from this meeting, because I got permission from them yesterday to do that. But I think that, if people are not doing any marketing, or they haven't changed what they're marketing around, especially digitally, they really need to look at how can they do hyper local digital advertising campaigns. So what does that look like in your mind? I mean, is it 250-mile radius? Is it, how can people shift their digital dollars to focus on the people who can actually come and stay at your hotel, or will come and stay?
Well, that goes like if you're doing a pay-per-click, or a kind of digital marketing campaign, and you're targeting your top 5 markets, and they might be out of state. Maybe you switch that into in-state, and you look at what is your drive market? How many hours are people willing to drive to get to you? Because we know that's going to come back before air travel. And also within that state, like if you do have, state regulations, and they're really wary of tourists or something, then maybe you just want to market to people within your own state to come to you, and not market to those out-of-state visitors, or people who would have to get on a plane, because it's, to get to you would be 22 hours driving. You don't think people are going to be doing that out of fun.
Yeah.
So I think that's their success looked like they were promoting a hotel that was outside a major market, and the hotel had that kind of beach outdoors. So I have a client who's a mountain cabin property. So their individual cabins, they're starting to do really well, because individual mountain cabins sound pretty safe to people in a remote destination versus a giant, metropolitan, 40-story hotel with, oh my.
Yeah.
Excuse me, there's somebody outside.
There's somebody outside making some noise there. Yeah, no, I hear you. I mean, in HTC, we learned last week, that there are 25 more rural markets that are doing significantly better than the big markets, right? So the top 25 are performing under, and some of them have been, even the state of Colorado, some locations in New Mexico, there are Florida resorts are doing rather well. One that blipped for them was that Chattanooga, Tennessee did so well at one point, but then they realized it was because of the tornado that went through, and so people had to have somewhere to stay. So there are different reasons for why different things are happening, but overall, those more rural outdoor opportunities are definitely looking attractive to customers. And so if you're in those locations, you should be definitely performing fairly well right now. We'll see what happens when it gets cold and snowy and you can't do some of the outdoor things, right? Unless you're in a ski resort. So, so one of the things you put on here, and we said, see our past webinar for details, and we're going to have another one about attribute-based selling coming up in September or October, but you said start it, like just start trying a few things out, right? What would you suggest hotels try right now with regard to that?
Well, I think this is where, really being positioned well for the recovery is going to matter. We're going to start to see, I always joke that like the graphs look like an apocalypse movie right now. Those of us who sat on the star, kind of, and you just see the numbers going to negative so fast, and it's like, the world's ending and it's crazy. But I think the recovery, you're going to see those that are positioned well technologically to take advantage of the thing that has permeated almost every other aspect of selling in our entire lives, taking effect with hotels, and that's the attribute-based selling initiative. So what you said last week, I was like, well, that's easy for you to do right now. Start listing all of those different attributes of your room. Is this a high floor, low floor? Is it quiet? Because I know you, Carol, like a quiet room,
you know me. Yeah.
Can you fit a rollaway in there? Can you, what are the attributes of every single room? And start just making those database. That is something you can do today, right now, because it starts with that kind of segmentation, and that's where you have, okay, this room, not just by what we've always done by bedding type, somewhat by size, but really breaking down those individual attributes. Does one room have a tub and one room only have a shower? Maybe a tub is important for some people. What are those things, and how can we break that down so that when you're in the recovery and you start to move towards that, you can be better positioned to give travelers exactly what they want, and also be better positioned to get the revenue for somebody who's willing to pay more for it. Like, you will pay more for a guaranteed quiet room, period. like, okay, and the airlines saw this, George Ruckus with Hudson Crossing did a great job of saying, look, when, and so did Elise Dave, our VP, about like, look, baggage fees, which we all hate and still hate, I think, but that turned into $2.7 billion for them. Boom, you think they're going to go back away from that now? No, So I think it's time for hotels to do that, and those that do it are going to be able to recover faster and better than those that don't.
Yeah. So shifting gears a little bit, I had a question from someone regarding this earlier this week. Right now, because people are going to hotels, even hotels like, luxury hotels like Ritz-Carlton, and their outlets are not open, or they're by reservation only and you can't get in, or, a lot of their services aren't open. And so the experience is not necessarily what people are expecting. And there are just some people who don't realize that we've had to go to all these efforts to do things differently right now to try to keep people safe. So I have a two-part question. Like, how is it effective to communicate to guests who are arriving what is and is not happening at your hotel? And then the second question is, what do you do with your online reputation when you're not meeting guest expectations, and so now they're starting to complain about it, even though we're in the middle of a pandemic, and that's why. How can we approach that with our guests?
So I think this goes back to the beginning, because I'm in marketing and I like to head off problems before they happen for operations, especially because it's important for marketing and and operations to have a good relationship, because they have to fulfill all the promises you're making. So if your website now is promising this amazing spa and dining and pool and, you know, all these kind of different amenities, and you legally cannot have them open, then you are setting yourself up for failure on the outset, because you're promising and you're making this kind of promise to the guests of this experience. So I think that goes back to setting up guest expectations in those confirmation emails, you know, upon property. Maybe stuff is changing weekly, daily. I mean, this stuff is crazy the way it's changing. So maybe you do have something on your in-TV network that lists, you know, what's open. Maybe you partner with local restaurants in your area to deliver to you. And you're providing guests with a menu and saying, these are wonderful local experiences. They'll deliver to our hotel, you know. Can they order through your concierge, depending on your property, things like that. So where can you be? It's about managing guest expectations. And I think that starts with the communication and continues to their progress on property. And for the second part, I think that travelers are going to be, I hope that they're going to be forgiving, because you may have a certain expectation, but the whole world is not like it was. And it might never go back to being like it was. You know, I think we're all going to have some PTSD from going through this. Definitely.
Group therapy required, right? So
yeah. So I'd say you know, doing just the basics of responding to reviews in an open and honest way. And if you respond and say, I'm sorry, due to local ordinances, our restaurant is not able to be open right now. And, you know, and just kind of explain to the future guests what it is. So it's setting up those expectations. When I arrive on your property, like, we're working for a client now, and in the past I would have said, I can't send a 4-page email to guests. I just, you know, it's against my heart tells me this is wrong in so many ways. But now, because it's like, here's our check-in procedure, but you know, there's like 15 items on the check-in procedure that alone, let alone, and you're not going to have daily housekeeping. So don't expect your bed to be made every day. You know, like, setting up those expectations is really important. And this may be where marketing can come in and do some creative, kooky videos as a guest, or, you know, to show people what is that arrival and you know, check in, check out, and guest experience look like your hotel. Because then if a guest doesn't want that, like if somebody doesn't want to wear masks and your hotel and your state says you have to wear masks, well, you need to really communicate that up front to the guests so they don't arrive there and have, you know, and go crazy on you or your team, because you don't want your team, who's probably stressed out anyway, to have to manage, you know, guests because they weren't informed properly, which is marketing's job.
Yeah. You know, I've seen some good examples of marketing trying to get, I guess, more at boutique and independent hotels of marketing really trying to communicate this with a little tongue in cheek, I think, you know, like, why be bothered? Like, no one needs to come in your room. Like, you know, do you want a stranger in your room right now? You know, those kinds of things that I think we've got to work to position it so that it looks, that it communicates that the reason we're doing this is because we care. And the reason we're doing this is because in our state, this is our requirement to stay open as a business, right? So, you know, and you know, I think that some guests are being forgiving, and I have seen on hospitality websites that some are not being so forgiving. And so I think just being honest in your communication back to them that, you know, we're doing this for your health and safety. We're doing this because we care, and we're doing this because we were required to. And, you know, you know, we want to continue to serve you into the future, and this is how we can accommodate for everything that's being asked of us, right? And hopefully people will respond to that. And then even if you get a negative review, if you respond to it with a kind and caring response of, we're doing this because we care, I think it says a lot more than, you know, ignoring it and not responding or arguing with the person. You know, just try to head it off with, hey, we're doing this, we care about your health and safety. we care about our employees' health and safety, and we care about staying open in the future and having a good relationship with our government, right? So, I think that it's all in how you word it and how you position it, but I certainly don't think you should ignore it if you're getting bad reviews right now. You need to, that's always the case. You should always be responding to good or bad as much as you can, right? Because it shows that you're engaged. Have you seen any challenges with those responses, Marisa, because of staffing reductions?
Again, this is property by property, but if you had somebody on your team who was responsible for responding to reviews and now they're furloughed and nobody's home doing that, you need to get on that, and you can hire us, you can hire another company temporarily, you need to do this, because if you don't, it could spiral into a, I remember seeing whenever we would get, several negative reviews, booking pace would fall off, and that was like so crazy to watch. Like 3 or 4 negative reviews, booking pace drops crazy. So you're going to be hurting yourself if you don't have that response. So I'd say if you had someone on your team and they're not there doing that anymore, somebody has to start doing that. Or when the recovery really does happen and states do start to open, well, your competitors who have been doing that are going to be better positioned than you, because there's clearly been somebody paying attention there, and you weren't. So that's really essential, and I think that's a challenge because so much of has been compressed. There's been so many furloughs, and especially within marketing and sales, because we can be seen as expendable. Thank you.
I don't agree with that at all, as you know. So we're almost to the close of our time. We've got a couple more minutes, Marisa. If there was a piece of advice that you could give to hotel marketers right now, what do you think is the most important thing for them in this moment to keep in mind?
I think it's important to realize you're not alone. It's not your fault. This happened to us. We did not create this by anything. And I think it's important to say, you're a marketer because you're creative. You're a marketer because you find different solutions. And now is really the time to pull out that creativity and start thinking crazy to try and find the brilliance and try and find something that will work. And what works today might not work next month. It might, it's going to be an evolution. So I think it's just kind of stay on for the ride and try. But don't be paralyzed by fear or not trying, because not trying is going to be worse than trying and failing.
Yeah, absolutely. That's good. I think we have to be willing to fail right now, because not everything is going to work, and things are not going to work as they used to. So, being willing to be a risk taker and try something new, and having a company that embraces the fact that everything isn't going to work right now is going to be important to our future as an industry. Well, Marisa, thank you so much for joining. It's been great to have you on. I think you gave some wonderful tips to everyone out there. Just so that you know, we are going to have a checklist that will be available for download for everyone. We'll make sure that Surf and Stand study that G-Commerce did, the case study, is available for you to glean some insights from that. And, I just really appreciate everyone being on today. I hope you'll come next week. I'm talking to Stacy from Navis about how call centers can be a great support and a great sales center for hotels now, even more important than they were before this pandemic, because guests have a lot of questions. And so we're going to really delve into that next week. Then we're going to take a couple-week break because we're going into a holiday, the last summer holiday of the year. And then we'll be back in mid-September. So thank you, everyone, for joining. And thank you, Marisa. Really super appreciate you. This will be available on a recording if you guys want to share it as well. We would appreciate that. Take care. Have a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.